Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiram Vanachari Jamuna Tiram Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bala Bhagiri Varadhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiram Vanachari Jamuna Tiram Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bala Bhagiri Varadhari Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Together please. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Praishva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamaśloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. We're reading this morning from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 22. And let's go ahead and read the Sanskrit for this. Start with the synonyms. Say the synonyms together, please. Raja Uvacha, the fortunate king said, Yata, as it is, Sandharyate, the conception is made, Brahman, O Brahmana, Dharana, conception, Yatra, where and how, Samata, in the summary, Yadrishi, the way by which, Va, or Hare, extricated, Ashu, without delay, Purushasya, of a person, Mana, of the mind, Malam, dirty things. Rajovacha, Yata Sandharyate Brahman, Dharana Yatra Sammata, Yadrishiva Harid Ashu, Purushasya Manomalam, Yata Sandharyate Brahman, Dharana Yatra Sammata, Yadrishiva Harid Ashu, Purushasya Manomalam. Please chant. Yata Sandharyate Brahman, Dharana Yatra Sammata, Yadrishiva Harid Ashu, Purushasya Manomalam. Yatahasandhayate Brahman
Dharanaya cha samata Yadashiva Hare Ashu Purushasya
Manomalam Yatahasandhayate Brahman Dharanaya Samata Yadashiva Hare Ashu Purushasya Manomalam. One more? No? Yatahasandhayate Brahman Dharanaya Samata Yadashiva Hare Ashu Purushasya Manomalam. And translation together. The fortunate King Parikshit, inquiring further, said, O Brahman, we describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied, and how the conception can be fixed, so that the very things in a person's mind can be removed. So we'll need two readers, one from the men's side, one from the ladies' side. How about that? Okay, Max, go ahead. Max and Christina.
The dirty things in the heart of a conditioned soul are the root cause of all troubles for him. A conditioned soul is surrounded by the manifold miseries of material existence, but on account of his gross ignorance, he is unable to remove the troubles due to dirty things in the heart accumulated during the long prison life in the material world. He is actually meant to serve the will of the Supreme Lord, but on account of the dirty things in his heart, he likes to serve his concocted desires. These desires, instead of giving him any peace of mind, create new problems and thus bind him to the cycle of repeated birth and death. These dirty things of fruit of work and empiric philosophy can be removed only by association with the Supreme Lord. The Lord, being omnipotent, can offer his association by his inconceivable potencies. Thus, persons who are unable to pin their faith on the personal feature of the Absolute are given a chance to associate with his virat-rupa, or the cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord. The cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord is a feature of his unlimited potencies. Since the potent and potencies are identical, even the conception of his impersonal cosmic feature helps the conditioned soul to associate with the Lord indirectly and thus gradually rise to the stage of personal contact.
Maharaj Parikshit was already directly connected with the personal feature of the Lord Sri Krishna, and as such, he had no need to inquire from Sukadeva Goswami about where and how to apply the mind in the impersonal virat-rupa of the Lord. But he inquired after a detailed description of the matter for the benefit of others who are unable to conceive of the transcendental personal feature of the Lord as the form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The non-devotee class of men cannot think of the personal feature of the Lord. Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the personal form of the Lord, like Rama or Krishna, is completely revolting to them. They have a poor estimation of the potency of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:11, it is explained by the Lord himself that people with a poor fund of knowledge deride the Supreme Personality of the Lord, taking him to be a common man. Such men are ignorant of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. By the inconceivable potency of the Lord, he can move in human society or any other society of living beings, and yet remain the same omnipotent Lord without deviating in the slightest from his transcendental position. So, for the benefit of men who are unable to accept the Lord in his personal eternal form, Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami how to fix the mind on him in the beginning, and the Goswami replied in detail as follows.
Thank you. Has anyone ever been bitten by a fire ant? Yeah. Do you know fire ants are not native to North America? They're imported from South America in the 1930s and found a new home. You should have built that wall. Anyway, so imagine, if you will, an ant crawling over your body. And say it's an explorer ant, goes out from the hill to find new horizons, and the ant crawls up your arm, and then on your head, and then down your face, and back down your arm, back on the ground. And I'll go and report at headquarters, oh, I found this incredible new virgin territory with unlimited forests and canyons and mountains. There's no concept of the whole picture. So it is when we look at the stars at night, and say if you're out in Alachua or somewhere else where it's not so urban, you have a beautiful view of this cosmic vista. And it has the same effect on us all, doesn't it? It's very humbling. They seem so real and accessible, these stars, and yet they're so far beyond our grasp. So this is the position, the ant-like position we have in this cosmic creation, that we are so very tiny, and yet we think we're so very important. We have our perception of things as, oh yeah, this is really where it's at. But we are, in fact, just seeing things in a very limited bandwidth, the reality of it all. This virat-rupa, or cosmic form, is therefore recommended for Maharaj Parikshit in this section of the Bhagavatam as an initial means to meditate on the Lord. Anyone remember the title of this chapter? Gotcha. Okay, Gopi. Yes, thank you. The first step in God realization. So please remember, there's only 10 chapters in the second canto. It's one of, if not the shortest of the cantos. So the first step in God realization is a natural place for Maharaj Parikshit to begin. For Sukadeva to begin. First step in God realization. So first of all, he decries materialists, as we discussed last week, and then he talks about meditating and austerity and simplifying your life, and then he's now introducing this concept of the first way and most accessible way to meditate on the Supreme. All of us are overwhelmed by the beauty of nature at times, right? The grandeur. Anyone ever seen the Grand Canyon, for example? Did you know? Yes, the Grand Canyon is it's a spectacle. It's really incredible. Yeah? And these large spires in it are named after Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. Did you know that? Yeah. So the grandeur of the ocean, the unlimited scope of the ocean when you're flying. I flew to Brazil one time to Nova Gokula and flew across the South American continent, and it was just amazing to see. Just like when you're flying in a cloudy day, you see clouds as far as you can in all directions. When you're flying over the rainforest there, you just see trees in all directions. It just appears like an unlimited blanket of green everywhere. It was quite unprecedented. You're used to landscapes being broken up, but there's nothing but green. So this is this access to God that most of us initially have, whether we're theists or atheists. That nature is beautiful, like Bruce. Remember hiking in Philadelphia, and in that very urban environment, yet there's this little park, and you get it brings you immediately to the mode of goodness, right? There's nature, there's water, there's trees, rocks, which we don't have in Florida. We have to import rocks from Pennsylvania here in Florida. We don't have coral. But anyway, the point is that all of us sense this universal form because God is present in his majesty. A little slice of his majesty is revealed to us in nature. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what is that? Chamsa. Anyway, all these incredible things that you've just heard about, Arjuna, and how I am in the best of everything and everywhere, just a tiny spark of my splendor, just a little sliver. So this is Krishna, the person who's just showing a little bit of his majesty, right? Just like if there's a big celebrity, somebody might, and he sits down and drinks a cup of coffee, then leaves, and some fans might, let me just take this little spark of his splendor. Or you shake his hand, I'll never wash this hand again. It's a tiny little byproduct of his grandeur. That's what we see in nature. And yet this is among the first steps in God realization. All right, as Prabhupada explains in the second paragraph, if there is no, first paragraph, there's no ability to reach the personal understanding. Then start with God in this impersonal way, in the sense of how incredibly huge He is. So this is, Prabhupada talks about the empiric philosophers. Just right off the bat, he says, right, these dirty things in the heart are not removed by empiric philosophy or by fruitive work. What does that mean? We hear these terms often, but let's just analyze those because they do pertain to us. They seem rather abstract. But what is fruitive work in practical terms that we experience, all of us in our lives?
Action.
Action for what purpose?
Gaining wealth.
Yes, making money. Making money. You have to have money to live. If you don't have money, then people look down on you. And so to work for money is considered noble. This is fruitive work. And it doesn't really matter what your theology is. If you make money, if you have money, you're a respectable person. Isn't it? If you have money, then immediately you are a scholar and a gentleman. No matter what your character is. Yeah? So the society of fruitive work around us exists. And then empiric philosophy. What does empiric mean? Yeah. What does that word empiric itself mean? Exactly. It's something that can be measured. No cheating. Empiric means that which can be perceived by the senses. And so empiric philosophy is that philosophy that is based on what you can touch, taste, smell, and hear. If you can't touch, taste, smell, or hear it, then it doesn't count. It's just theoretical. Only that which is actually measurable, which is tangible. This dates from Aristotle, I understand, philosophically, that Aristotle was the first to introduce this idea that you can find the ultimate truth through scientific, systematic, material investigation. If we analyze deeply enough, we'll come to the final stage of reality. So we kind of mock this because it's so ant-like. Like if the explorer ant goes back to the hill and is now a big hero having discovered all this new territory, then the ant might speak some philosophy. Yes, and this new territory has come about because of this or that. And no one can question because no one else has seen it. So similarly, science might be able to split the atom or see all these minute things that others can't see, and therefore they come back to the hill and say, well, this is how reality is. See, there was a scientist who, sorry, Chris and Christina, I'm bashing the scientists here. Nothing personal. Scientific philosophy. But one scientist was speaking in a TED Talk about how thoroughly science has managed to unpack the Big Bang. And so he said, just give us one miracle and we'll explain everything else. Where the singularity came from, where this all originated, that we can't explain. But just spot us that much and we can tell you everything else. So this is empiric philosophy. We can't explain how it came about or why it exists. Let's speak of why it exists, right? But we can't explain what happens after it exists. So hence, the empiric philosopher does not have to acknowledge the existence of a supreme person. So to meditate on the energy of the supreme person is a first step in God realization. But it will stop there, like in pantheism, just appreciating God and nature, unless we have an understanding that there is a person behind it. So the problem with empiric philosophy is that it all depends upon the endeavor of the researcher. In other words, we have to put all of our energy out, and whatever we can perceive within our bandwidth, that is reality. We try to push the limits a little bit more. Like in 1913, the highest pole vault in the world was 12 feet and 3 inches. By now, 100 years later, that same event, people are jumping 20 feet and 2 inches. Better training, better equipment. So there's been progress, but how much is that 8 feet in the scope of the big picture? But it appears like progress because we've gone from 12 feet to 20 feet. Ooh. But really, what has changed? What have we really grasped? So little. So in empiric philosophy, we are limited by our senses. So we can appreciate nature, we can send telescopes into space beyond the Earth's atmosphere to get a better look at things. And we can see that this star is in this stage of existence, and this exoplanet, this little planet around it, has this mineral content based on the color analysis. And that is the frontier of knowledge. And we're getting there. We're going to find out God. We're going to find out ultimate reality through this method. So this is compared to, let's say you're sitting down in a chair and some scoundrel has put glue on your chair. And so when you try to get up, you find that you are limited. You can't move. So all of a sudden, your reach has been constrained. And let's say there's somebody on the other side of the room, say 10 feet away, who you would like to meet and shake hands with. But because your movement is limited, you can't reach on your own. If you want to shake hands with that person's going to have to get up and come over to you. See? So this is how it is with God, that we have a limited ability to perceive him and to understand him. But if he comes to us, then we can connect. So our desire needs to be there, the aspiration to touch, to shake his hand, to have a relationship. And this is the basic problem with empiric philosophy. There is no such prerequisite. So Srimad Bhagavatam says, yes, God is majestic and God is created and the universe is incredible. So nonetheless, you need to get off your chair. And if you're not accepting the existence of a superior person, you're glued to, you're limited to your particular scope of reality. All right, so that's a little introduction. Let's go ahead and read some of these descriptions of the universal form. Can we go inside ladies' side, pass around the mics, please? And let's see how little the gap can be between readers. That'll be our challenge.
Sukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayam, and thus control the mind and senses, and with intelligence apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord, called the virat-rupa.
This gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the Absolute Truth, wherein the universal result in past, present, and future of material time is experienced.
Go ahead.
The gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is a subject for the Virat conception.
Persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Patala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatala planets. The ankles are the Mahatala planets, and his shanks constitute the Talatala planets.
The knees of the universal form are the planetary system of the name Sutala, and the two thighs are Vitala and Atala planetary systems. The hips are Mahitala, and the outer space is the depression of his navel.
The chest of the original personality of the gigantic form is the luminary planetary system. His neck is the Mahar planets. His mouth is the Janas planets, and his forehead is the Tapas planetary system. Topmost planetary system known as Satyaloka is the head of he who has 1,000 heads.
His arms are the demigods headed by Indra. The 10 directional sides are his ears, and physical sound is his sense of hearing. His nostrils are the 2 Ashwini Kumaras, and material fragrance is his sense of smell. His mouth is the blazing fire.
The sphere of outer space constitutes his eye pits, and the eyeball is the sun as the power of seeing. His eyelids are both the day and night, and in the movements of his eyebrows, Brahma and similar supreme personalities reside. His palate is the director of water, Varuna, and the juice or essence of everything is his tongue.
They say that the Vedic hymns are the cerebral passage of the Lord, and his jaws of teeth are Yama, god of death, who punishes the sinners. The art of affection is his set of teeth, and the most alluring illusory material energy is his smile. This great ocean of material creation is but the casting of his glance over us.
Modesty is the upper portion of his lips, hankering his chin. Religion is the breast of the Lord, and irreligion is his back. Brahmaji, who generates all living beings in the material world, is his genitals, and the Mitra Varunas are his two testicles. The ocean is his waist, and the hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones.
O king, the rivers are the veins of the gigantic body, the trees are the hairs of his body, and the omnipotent air is his breath. The passing ages are his movements, and his activities are the reactions of the three modes of material nature.
O best among the Kurs, the clouds which carry water are the hairs of his head. The terminations of days or nights are his dress, and supreme cause of material creation is his intelligence. His mind is the moon, the reservoir of all changes.
The principle of matter, Mahatattva, is the consciousness of the omnipresent Lord, as asserted by the experts, and Rudadev is his ego. The horse, mule, camel, and elephant are his nails, and wild animals and all quadrupeds are situated in the belt zone of the Lord.
Varieties of birds are indications of his masterful artistic sense. Manu, the father of mankind, is the emblem of his standard intelligence, and humanity is his residence. The celestial species of human beings, like the Gandharvas, Vidharas, Charanas, and angels, all represent his musical rhythm, and the demonic soldiers are representatives of his wonderful prowess.
The Virat-Purusha's face is the Brahmanas, his arms are the Kshatriyas, his thighs are the Vaishyas, and the Shudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him, and it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord.
I have thus explained to you the gross material gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world.
One should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations, just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on him, the only all blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation.
Okay, thank you. So what among those descriptions, what were some of the analogies that stood out to you? Kopi?
I just liked how the ferocious demon soldiers represent his prowess. I thought it was nice that the demons also get a shout out.
Yes, you remember his breast is religion and his back is irreligion. Once Srila Prabhupada was speaking to a disciple who was asking, should I do this service or that service? And Prabhupada wanted him to do both. He says, you should do both of them. Krishna's head is important, Krishna's tail is important. Everything about Krishna is important. What is that?
Is irreligion important?
Yes, that is part, yes. I mean, where else does it come from? That's the backside. It's like the fifth canto is compared to Krishna's midsection. And the description of the hellish planets is in there, on the backside. So if it doesn't come from God, where does hell come from? Where do the demons come from? That's a part of the creation. So where do we read about the virat-rupa in Bhagavad Gita? What's that? Which chapter? Chapter 11, yeah, the universal form. So Arjuna starts, if you remember that description, he starts by seeing this majestic, beautiful, awe-inspiring vision of demigods and jewelry and incredible beauty and colors. And he's quite overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. But then he starts to see all the warriors on the battlefield rushing into the mouth of this gigantic form and being chewed up. And then his awe turns to horror. And he says that the entire universe is afraid of you, and who are you? What are you doing here? So this is how material nature exists. It's got this beautiful side and it's got the ugly side. What appears to us to be the ugly side is also God's creation. And why would there be an ugly side in creation? In the universal form. Why not just everything roses and violins? Yes?
Because if it was, we would never want to go back to Godhead.
Yes.
If it was wonderful, we would get stuck here. So suffering causes us to want to depart.
Jai, suffering.
That's the purpose for irreligion too. Irreligion is a part of that process of becoming materially exhausted.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Exactly. So this is the problem with empiric philosophy, if you will, that it presupposes that we are meant to enjoy this world. And one of the means of enjoying it is finding out all about it. It's funny how the idea of analyzing the universal form is so, there's so much room for exaggeration because people can't really refute what empiric philosophy says. I'm thinking about dark matter. So dark matter, we estimate, comprises 84% of creation in the universe. It has to be there. We can't see it. Therefore, it's called dark matter, but it has to be there. Otherwise, all the planets and the galaxies would be just spinning out of control. Something is there holding it together. So we can't see it, but we know it's there. So this is a great asset to be able to fudge like this. So that, well, we can't see something, but we know it's there. It's like, so if you like write a check, for example, in the bank, far in excess of your balance, and the bank returns the check to you, say, no, the money is there, you just can't see it. So similarly, we can exaggerate people can exaggerate in order to try to explain. But what we're getting this explanation here is that no, God is behind everything, and this is how you see him, and this is how you can reflect on him in the things that you can see and perceive. Not that God is an optional matter, but no, God is the creator of all of this, all of the universes, all of the matter, all of the atoms, everything. You see, approaching the same subject theistically is fine, but if it's theistic optional, then it's demonic. There's no sense of why it exists and no way to get out of it, and no reason to get out of it. So, okay, thank you. Therefore, the demons are there, the dark side is there, the virat-rupa is killing everybody. That's also coming from Krishna. Anything else from these descriptions that stuck out to you, Kartikeya?
Yeah, the art of affection is his set of teeth, and the most alluring illusory material energy is his smile.
Yes. What is the most alluring material energy? Sex life. There we go. That is his smile. Yes, Srila Prabhupada was once asked, what if everybody became Krishna conscious? How would we continue the human race? But if everybody practiced celibacy, how would we continue the human race? And he said, why do you want to continue this nonsense human race? On another similar occasion, he said, do you really think there's any danger of that happening? Please.
In reading descriptions like these, I find that it's easy to go to two extremes. One of them is just blindly accepting, yeah, I'm a Hare Krishna, yeah, all of this, yeah, sure, it's all true, definitely, I believe it. And then the other extreme is very skeptical. No way is this possibly true. I can accept some of these things, Prabhupada says, but this is strange.
Yes, prove it. In other words, prove it. So it gets back to this epistemology. Prove it empirically. Prove it empirically, and then I might do God the big favor of believing in him. There's no self-reflection in this relationship. God, show yourself to me, and I might believe in you, otherwise forget it. So Srimad Bhagavatam is presenting God from the personal point of view, that there is a person present behind the creation. So, this is schizophrenic. In other words, is it rational to assume that everything exists without a creator? That is the foundational issue. So there's that we can argue very powerfully that everything we see comes from a person. Every car, every invention, every corporation, every piece of food, there is a person behind everything. Every piece of clothing we're wearing, every book, every light, there are people behind everything. So we're to assume that this incredible nature and natural world, that it just happened by chance. It is an accident. The result of that morally is that life is absurd, has no meaning, therefore there's no need to observe any kind of morality, because everything just exists by random circumstance. And what does it matter if I do this or that? What does it matter if I hurt people? What does it matter? Because it's all just happening by random circumstance. Why should we care? There's so many arguments we can give about why personalism, or theism, we'll just say in simple terms, theism is so valuable for human beings. First, it gives purpose to our lives. Secondly, it gives cohesion in society. If we don't have a concept of a supreme person, then it's every man for himself. Everyone's just competing to get as much as they can. That's the goal. So there's many ramifications of atheism that are not discussed outside. I mean, at least in my experience, you don't see these things outside of Srimad Bhagavatam. The powerful case not only for theism but for personalism. I was thinking about this verse from the Ishopanishad the other day, Om Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam, that everything is created by the perfect, and therefore because he's so perfect, every creation that emanates from him is perfect and complete in and of itself. So I was thinking about that in relation to everybody's body, our physical body. We all have a basic sense, however limited our body is in various ways. We all have a sense that it's a perfect and complete creation. It is a complete functioning unit in and of itself, even though objectively it's limited in so many ways. But it all hangs together and works as a perfect, complete whole. So that's just one very vivid example. Everything that exists has its symmetry, has its beauty, has its place in nature. So incredibly detailed. How could it just accidentally happen? Sadaputa Prabhu wrote this very insightful book on this point. He was a student of statistics in his undergraduate days. And so he calculated that for this scientific theory is that earth was covered with primordial soup, a liquid mass of all the various elements. And from that incoherent mass, somehow certain chemicals came in line and formed the first DNA that in turn replicated itself. So he did some calculation based on that content of the primordial soup as science presents it, with this certain percentage of this, certain percentage of that element. He said for the complex arrangement of one strand of DNA to occur by random chance, the Earth would have to be covered with 100 miles of primordial soup, and it would have to be 10 to the 13th power, some incredible number, times older than science today estimates the Earth is, for one strand of DNA to occur naturally. The chances, in other words, are so vast. So this is a very powerful argument on this point, that why do we accept Srimad Bhagavatam when it's all these things beyond our senses? Because the other stories are so hard to believe. So we have the Bhagavatam stories, or we have science stories. We've been very conditioned to believe the science stories, but that is really all they are. Science can't prove that creation came from a Big Bang. They can't prove that life came about by accident. And yet we're asked to not only accept these things, but if we don't accept them, then we can't pass the course, right? So we're more or less obliged. But in simple terms, the personal versus the impersonal, or the theist versus the atheist. These are very simple grounds to establish the validity of Srimad Bhagavatam. One more point in that is if we study science, we get bored. If we study Bhagavatam, we become enlightened. Except in Bhagavatam class, but otherwise. All right. Yes, Kunti.
You mentioned that everything emanating from Krishna is perfect and complete. That's in terms like we were talking about, like material energy. But I'm wondering, what about the individual souls? Like, we're not perfect? Are we complete?
Are we as individual souls perfect and complete? Yes, we are. We are like diamonds covered with mud in the material world. We have our inherent beauty, but it's not visible at the moment. It's covered. This is the verse we read about the dirty things in the mind. That's by meditating on the virat-rupa, it helps remove the dirty things from the mind. So seeing God in nature, in other words, it helps purify us, and therefore Sukadeva is recommending it. How this conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed. This basic dirt is just thinking it exists independently of God. And if it's independent of God, let me enjoy it. So whatever this kind of sense gratification is, I don't have to worry about God, let me enjoy it. It is boga. It is meant for my enjoyment. This is the mentality of the demon. In the 16th chapter of the Gita, Krishna describes that Ishwaraham aham bogi. Ishwara aham, I am the controller, aham bogi, and everything's meant for my enjoyment. Some said him balabam sukhi, and I'm perfect and powerful and happy. That's why the demon tries to exploit Krishna's energy. So we are just conditioned to that demoniac way of thinking, and we're trying to clean away that covering from our inherently beautiful soul. Cheto darpanam marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirapanam. It takes time, but it always works, and it's very simple. So just being able to position ourselves to continue in the process gradually reveals that perfect and complete self that we really are. Christina, you're going to blast me for it. on behalf of Empiric Science.
Yes, I mean, since you addressed me by name, I felt I needed to say something. So first of all, just to kind of update you on what's going on with me, I don't really care if you bash science anymore. I'm on team theology and philosophy now. I'm kind of over science. So on the theology front, so first of all, I would say that it is actually true that in many various religions, earning a bunch of money is looked on poorly. So Catholicism being, a great example of that. It is actually from Protestantism, that is Calvinism, that the Protestant work ethic came about, and then it became kind of religiously sanctioned to make a lot of money. So I mean, in traditional Hinduism and Catholicism and a lot of other religions, like making a lot of money was looked on, very, very suspiciously. Under Catholicism, it was like rich people would donate money to help build cathedrals, and they would specifically ask for a special part of the cathedral. Part of that money was given to make a special part of the cathedral where the priest could specifically pray for the souls of the rich people, because it was understood that if they were rich, then they were probably going to hell. So that's one thing. So while you can bash science all you want, but I just I just want to establish here that this dichotomy is not really a true dichotomy between kind of like the Big Bang theory and not the TV show, but the Big Bang and the Srimad Bhagavatam. I actually have someone at the IVS, where I'm studying, who is doing her master's thesis on how Bhaktivinoda Thakur shows us that the evolutionary theory is not incompatible with the Bhagavatam. And Sukadeva Muni Prabhu, who has PhD in history of science, he talks about how it could have, Krishna could have made the universe through a Big Bang. And Bhaktivinoda Goswami talks about how, in Bhagavatam, or when you kind of get into the nitty gritty of like how the universe was formed, that Lord Krishna kind of casts his glance turns into Shiva, Shiva copulates with Parvati, and that starts the universe, which, then orgasm could be the Big Bang. Like that could definitely be a thing. So, and when you talk about dark matter, Lord Krishna could have created dark matter. I just want to point out that
no problem.
It's not that it's not that these things about
you may be misreading me a little bit.
Evolutionary theory and dark matter automatically assume atheism. So it's just like for me it's
let's
important
address
to be
that.
careful about it.
That is the key point, and I appreciate that very thorough recap of my class there. The foundational point is more what like Kuti was saying about what is our true self? How can we uncover our true self? And the problem with science is not science per se, it is the belief that science will bring us to that ultimate knowledge that we are seeking. In other words, so I want to move on a little bit. So
all right,
people want to speak.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but okay.
Okay, please go ahead. Yes.
I just wanted to comment on the idea of the perfect and complete in response.
Exists, but why it exists. And that isn't touched by a clinical approach to reality. Never mind the reason, but as Rasika is pointing out, that's the foundational point of Srimad Bhagavatam. Gopal, you want to add something to that? Oh, Amrita? Oh, sorry.
I came across, we talked about this years ago, I came across it again, it is Prabhupada, I think it's in the 9th canto. He said if you take the pradhan, which is the unmanifest material energy, and you take the glance of the Mahavishnu as the agitation, then you have the Big Bang. Prabhupada actually said that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, he also said, I heard in a lecture, and I've seen it in Back to Godhead also, that we'll never be perfect even in our living liberated state. Krishna is the only perfect person.
Amrita has a question, please.
I was just thinking that it's so strange to think of ourselves as perfect and complete, yet we have all these dirty things in our hearts. And then I like what Rasika Prabhu said, that this material energy is also perfect and complete. And so that made me realize that the reason we have these dirty things in our heart is because of our desire. And so that it's just functioning as a part of our desire. So we are perfect and complete. And due to our desires, we are covered by material energy.
Which is perfect.
Perfect and complete.
Perfect and complete, yes.
Yeah,
so even in our imperfect stage.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's idea of perfection. We tend to think that it would be without suffering, but suffering is also part of the perfection, in other words. Yeah, suffering just goes on and on. The only difference is that as we progress in Krishna consciousness, we become less affected by it. It doesn't stop. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta said that one who takes to the spiritual path will find it strewn with thorns. But our ability to see beyond the suffering and see the purpose of the suffering allows us to rise above it. That's Prabhu.
I was just thinking of a funny analogy on this point that all the so-called ugly, horrific things in this world, they serve a purpose to kind of make us inquire about somewhere that's more suitable and fitting for us. It's almost like, imagine there's two house parties going on right next to each other, and the one has really nice people, they're all getting along, it's a very joyous occasion. The other house parties, maybe people from Tallahassee and Jacksonville and a bunch of weird people. I think Krishna just kind of comes over and he cuts the speakers, cuts the cord or something like that, and they're kind of angry, but then that allows them to hear that there's a better party going on right next door.
Okay, it's got to be a higher taste. Yes, good point. Yes, and even though this party also has its shortcomings, its sufferings, a devotee, one of our acharyas writes, Vishva Purna Sukhayate, that the world of the universe, the Vishva, appears beautiful. It has its frightening aspects, overwhelming aspects, but it looks beautiful because we understand its purpose. Because we see this is not really my permanent home. Because we see I'm going through pain in order to deeply convince me that I want to go to the other party. I want to be in the party where you don't have to, where you never OD, you never throw up, you never wake up the next day and say, why did I do that? That party that just goes on and on. Everybody is dancing. Something like Guru Puja this morning. The Festival of the Holy Name this weekend. And you can imagine the beauty of the whole world coming to the Festival of the Holy Name. All the battles that are going on over land and oil and money and whatever. People will say, why go to that party? Okay, that's last point.
Just a brief pastime I heard from Hanumat Prashak Swami in a lecture. He said that Prabhupada had met with this scientist, and this was, I believe, Los Angeles. They were sitting in the courtyard and talking, and this scientist was arguing with everything Prabhupada said. And so they brought in this gigantic plate of Mahaprasad. Prabhupada said, this is for you. And the man was amazed, had a lot of Mahaprasad. Prabhupada had him go and watch the Arti and Kirtan. He was very impressed. It was the Sunday feast, packed house. And then afterwards, there was a plate of Sunday feast prasad. And somehow this scientist was like, can I have that? So just sitting around. And even after he had eaten a lot of the Maha already, so he had this Sunday feast plate. He was so happy with it. And then he spoke with Prabhupada again. And Prabhupada was making the same exact points, the same arguments. And the scientist was actually finding reasons from scientific experiments to prove the points that Prabhupada was making.
Yes.
So Prabhupada did this to emphasize the importance of prasadam for those who are extreme. Like the Bhaktivedanta Institute does a nice job at these conferences having first class prasadam, first class reception to really win the way to someone's mind through their stomach.
That just reminded me of this very brief but nice pastime. Srila Prabhupada was in Australia, and the devotees brought a very respectable civil servant to him, some highly placed civil servant. Man was dressed in a very nice suit with cufflinks and first class attire. So he sat down on the floor in front of Prabhupada, and some of the devotees were thinking, "Oh, this is not very appropriate. There's this gentleman coming in, but he's on the floor." Anyway, they didn't want to sit higher. They didn't want him higher than Prabhupada. So he's sitting on the floor, and they chatted a while, and then men said, "Well, I need to go now." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, no, first have some prasad. You need some prasad." So they brought in a bowl full of gulab jamuns floating in syrup. And the artless devotee reaches in with his hand, takes out a dripping gulab jamun and puts it in the man's hand. So the man's sitting there with his soggy gulab jamun in his hand, and Prabhupada indicates, like, eat the whole thing. So the syrup is running down his wrist, on his cufflinks, on his... and he pops the whole thing in his mouth, and the syrup is coming out of his mouth, dribbling on his suit. And the devotees who are a little more tuned in are saying, "Oh, God, so stupid, how could he do?" And the man's chewing, and then he says, "I'll have another." And he said, "This would go very well with my rum." So yes, this is the power of prasadam. All right, Krishna lunch ki jai. Breakfast prasadam ki jai. Nanda Nandana ki jai. Bodies full of ignorance, fraught with lust and every sense of crossing the sea of death and birth. All the senses rusty bound barely can be overcome, while the soul is struggling on this earth.